Governor Charlie Crist holds a special event to veto Senate Bill 6. Is this a declaration of independence from his own party? Will there be fallout? And will this change the dynamic in the race for the U.S. Senate? We'll have all that and more on this edition of Power Play with Steve Bosquet of the St. Pete Times and Josh Haffenbrack with the Sun Sentinel. So, Steve, what do you think? I mean, this has been, sort of an amazing turn of events in the legislature.
It has. Charlie Crist was expected to veto this bill. There was never any real consideration for signing it. Legislators are very upset with him because he didn't offer any positive alternatives. He just said, I don't like this bill. And he vetoes it, and he uses terms like jamming it down people's throats. There's going to be a lot of repercussions here. You've already seen legislators pulling their endorsements of Charlie Crist as a U.S. Senate candidate. There's going to be more of that coming.
Josh, I mean, are you surprised? I mean, the latest is former Senator Connie Mack. I mean, that was, that's quite a blow.
That's his campaign chair and, of course, his political mentor. And so that's a major blow for him. And I think it's just another sign that really he doesn't have much of a support base in the Republican Party anymore.
I mean, were you surprised? You've been covering this story. Were you surprised that he vetoed this measure? I mean, at some point in time, it looked like he was very supportive, and was moving in that direction.
No, wasn't surprised. He was initially supportive of the bill. He says he never gave anybody his word that he would sign it, and there's no evidence that he did give his word. But he played the game that Charlie Crist plays, which is basically to always keep the door open, keep his options open. But I've found in covering Charlie Crist for a number of years that once he moves from point A to point B, once he moves off a position on an issue, as he did here, he doesn't go back. He doesn't go back. He's fading away, and he's finding a realm that he's more comfortable with. And that rally at Leon High School with all those kids and teachers shows that he feels that vetoing this bill has a political benefit for him down the line.
See, and how amazing is that? I mean, do you look at this as a good thing or as a bad thing for them and for the campaign, the vetoing of this Senate Bill 6?
Well, in one sense, it's a good thing because it's sort of who he is. It lets him be who he is. He wasn't winning over conservatives, and he wasn't going to win over conservatives. I think that, they've drifted to Marco Rubio. And so this, he's run his governorship as a moderate populist kind of governor, and this sort of gets him back to that roots instead of trying to be a conservative, which he struggles to do.
I mean, is this a sign that he's sort of breaking away from the Republican Party?
Absolutely. I mean, one argument you could use is why should Charlie Crist run as an independent? Because he's not a Republican. Well, there's one possibility, and a lot of people, Charlie Crist partisans, will hear this and react in horror. But other than being anti-taxes and being very strong on the Second Amendment, guns and taxes, beyond that, it's hard to find really strong Republican orthodoxy in Charlie Crist.
But Governor Crist has sort of put those rumors to rest and said, absolutely not.
Well, his campaign manager put out a statement saying absolutely not. The governor himself has been more circumspect and has sort of ducked questions about it. And if you'll remember last session, he was sort of playing a similar dance on whether or not he'd run for U.S. Senate at all. And he was sort of put it off, said, I'm focused on the session, which is exactly what he's saying now. And then a week after session last year, he got in the race. So you could see a similar pattern.
When he vetoed the bill, he said politics had nothing to do with it. A statement that nobody in the Capitol is going to accept at face value. Nobody. The two are intertwined tremendously. I went to the villages last weekend and saw those people at the villages and in Tavares coming up to Charlie Crist. It was really something to see. There is the opposition to this bill may be rooted in some misinformation, but it goes way beyond a teachers union.
So do you think that even though he vetoed Senate Bill 6, that he still has his base out there, that the people that love him and adore him as he travels around the state?
Well, this actually might give him, one thing he lacked compared to Rubio was enthusiastic supporters. And this might give him some of that. There's a lot of teachers, in Broward County, they were holding signs on the streets and honking for Charlie Crist for vetoing this bill. Teachers across the state, I'm sure last night at their dinner tables were talking about Charlie Crist's veto. So this might give him some more of an enthusiastic base, and in addition, it plays to his strength, which is sort of the broad middle, independents and moderates in each party.
Well, moving along, the Quinnipiac poll also came out talking about Marco Rubio being 23 points ahead of Governor Crist in the race for the U.S. Senate, but if he runs as an independent, there's a possibility that would sort of even things out. Thoughts?
Sure. Well, Rubio owns the Republican nomination right now, lock, stock, and barrel, and he outraised Charlie Crist 3-1 in this last quarter. That will only get worse for Crist because money begets more money, and the huge poll advantage that Rubio has is a tremendous fundraising advantage that he has. And all this is before or without having the obvious endorsement of Jeb Bush, which I think he's going to get pretty soon.
To win as an independent, he'll need at least 50 to 60% of independent voters, and he'll need to pull off a quarter to a third of Republicans and Democrats. Now, it's going to be a difficult feat, but he's got his own brand in Florida politics. He's got a lot of money in the bank. He's got 100% name ID. So if there's someone who's positioned to try to make a run at it, it would be Charlie Crist.
With that, let's go to our power play of the week. Steve?
It's Charlie Crist, obviously, for vetoing Senate Bill 6 and for galvanizing this opposition to the bill. And we're going to see how he can channel that into creating out of whole cloth a base for a U.S. Senate independent candidacy.
Josh?
I'm going to go with the teachers in Florida as well as the teachers union. That they really had a groundswell of opposition to this bill. And like Steve said, maybe some of it was based on misinformation, but it went well beyond the FEA. And really, teachers were very concerned about this bill. And they showed that while it might not happen often in this process, if you do have a critical mass of opposition, you can't affect the outcome of legislation.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Josh, for being here with us. And thank you, our viewers, for watching another edition of Power Play. For all the latest on your political news, please visit safereview.com.